What's happening, everyone? Today, you have the honor of meeting my Bill. Here he is. Bill, how you been?
I've been good.
Thanks for coming on. I've been trying to get you on for quite a while, and I'm glad you finally had seen the light.
I don't want to become famous like you.
Well, one day, maybe tens of people all around the world will watch you talk.
I know. That's scary.
You never know.
Or they'll be sleeping.
Oh, Bill. So we were actually just talking about your time in the military. So this was during the Vietnam era. Mm-hmm. A lot of people associate that with a draft, because that was the last time that was really used. We all fill out our draft cards and everything, but you actually had to use it.
Number 50.
Oh, so did your name actually got called, or did you enlist first?
No, I actually, well, it started out, I had a student exemption. If you took 15 units in college, then you could apply for a student exemption. So I had that, but I dropped a class, and 2 weeks later, I got a draft notice.
It was how many units that you had to take?
15.
15. Oh, what class did you drop?
I don't remember. But I remember coming home, my mom was crying. She was really upset.
And so as soon as you dropped that, they called your number.
Well, yeah, I think it was 2 weeks later I got a draft in the mail. So they were right on it. And then back in the day in Concord, I don't remember the name of that shopping center. They used to have a movie theater. They have a movie theater there. Off of Willow Pass Road.
Oh, is it the Dome? The old Dome theater?
No. The one
Drive-in?
by where the car dealers are.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's not parking. It's I don't remember. But anyhow, they had the Marines, the Navy, the Army, and the Coast Guard. So I said, well, I'm going to have to enlist so I can at least pick where I go. So I went into the Coast Guard, and they chuckled. They said, no, you
nice try, buddy.
Yeah, and I wasn't going to go in the Marines, and the Navy was an extra year. So I walked into the Army, and I said, well, at that time I was trying to figure out every possible way to get out. At first I took a bunch of tests when I was trying to get out and intentionally made them awful. And then I realized I'm going to have to try to do better. And I did well enough that I remember the guy asking me if I'd like to get into the warrant officer school. And I said, oh, warrant officer, that'd be kind of fun. What do they do? Oh, they fly. I go, oh, yeah, that's great. Well, wait a minute. What do they fly? Helicopters. I said, no, forget that. But they gave me two choices. I could either be in military intelligence or nuclear. So I picked nuclear, figuring they're not going to put those in the jungle. I figured I was probably going to go to Germany. But they ended up, after school, which was about, quite a few months, down in Texas, then I ended up getting stationed in Sausalito, not a bad place. And then after a year and a half, I went to South Korea.
Oh, so, the good Korea.
Yeah, the good Korea.
So that warrant officer position, they created that so that people could fly without being an officer. You could be enlisted and fly.
Yeah.
Just for basically helicopters. Remember my friend Dave, his dad did that in Vietnam. He flew helicopters.
Yeah, and their life expectancy was in minutes.
Yeah. Didn't they? You said that they used to sit on their helmets, right?
Yeah.
God.
That was common practice, anybody that flew in a helicopter.
I mean, you're really probably not going to get shot in the head in a helicopter. That's for sure. Now,
the problem was they had those Hueys, they call them. And they made this noise, but you could hear them coming a mile away. And the bad guys used to just sit in the jungle and pointing their weapons in the air. And as soon as they saw it, they'd open fire,
Well, that was one of the reasons they used the Agent Orange and tried to get rid of the jungles, right, for their cover.
Yeah, but that also effed up all those service people.
Yeah.
They did that when I was in college up in Northern California to get rid of they used to spray that stuff to get rid of the evergreen, they wanted the redwoods but they didn't want the oak trees and that, so it was instead of 245D, I think it was 245T. And all the people that were growing pot up there back in the day, they would shoot at the helicopters because they didn't want them ruining their pot plants.
Oh, geez. Well, maybe it gave it an extra kick.
Maybe.
You know? But that was in Humboldt, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Because you were up there in Humboldt.
Yeah. I was I was in the military from 72 to 75. And when I got out, I ended up moving up to Humboldt County to kind of get out of the Bay Area. And my ex was going to school at Humboldt, and eventually I got in through the military through a
GI Bill?
GI Bill, but a preliminary. I didn't have the grades to get into the college up there, so I went in through a veterans program where you go for 2 semesters and they give you some prep classes, and then I enrolled in Humboldt, and I really didn't have any desire to get a degree, but there was some. I took a bunch of industrial technology classes, and I really liked those, so I ended up started taking classes, and God, there's a bunch of stories there, but
we've got time.
After the Veterans Administration told me that I should sign up as a botany major, and then it makes it easier to get in. So I signed up as a botany major, and then a friend of mine that was going to school up there says, you ought to take some of these industrial technology classes. You'd really like them. And so I took some metals classes and some wood classes, and after a couple of years, I'd already taken all the lower division classes, and they actually hired me to work in the plastics lab, doing molds and stuff. And then I was TAing as a teacher's assistant on a lot of the upper division classes. But I'd already taken all the lower division, and I'd taken a bunch of the upper division, enough that I really wasn't much left for me to take. And in my junior year, I was working summers driving logging trucks to pay for college. So one time they have a board that they put you on, and as you gain seniority, you move up the board. And the further you're up the board, the earlier they call you to go to work. And I was taking all sorts of lab classes so that I could get them all done before they might call me back to work, because I didn't want to lose a job. It was paying, I think, a whopping $7.50 an hour or something.
But that's before inflation.
I know. So
today that'd be like, $80 an hour.
So I had a paper that I had to write for one of the classes, and I couldn't, I was already working, and I was trying to figure out how the hell I can get it to the department while I'm working. So one day they loaded me, and I had to bring a load from south of Eureka up past Eureka, and I had to go by where the college was. So Humboldt State has a parking lot that goes up and it makes a T, and my department was just to the right of that T. So I drove up loaded onto the campus and made a right, and then backed up and parked the truck on the steps of the department and jumped out and ran up. And
a full logging truck?
Yeah, loaded to the hill, and put my paper in the professor's box, ran down and hopped into the truck and made a left and down the hill, and I was out of there. And I thought, oh, God, man, I nailed this one. Well, what I didn't know, the dean of science was walking, and he goes, "What? Who the hell is that?" And apparently followed where I went and found out who I was, and then put a freeze on my admissions into Humboldt. The next year, when I got there, I went to register, and he go, "Oh, you have to see the dean of science. He's put a hold on you. You're not allowed to attend Humboldt right now until you talk to him." So I set up an appointment. I go, "What's wrong? What did I do? My grades are great and everything's fine." And I had a meeting with him, and he says, "Mr. Radcliffe, you're in big trouble." And it wasn't because of the logging truck. It was because he looked at my records and he says, "You came to Humboldt and got admitted as a botany major, and yet you've never taken one botany class since you've been here, and you're in your junior year as far as the credits go. So anyhow, I said, well, I'll switch my major, and he was really PO'd about that, more than the truck. And then he told me, of course, don't ever drive a truck on campus again.
What a jerk.
Well, no, not really. I mean, he was probably worried I was going to drive over some student back in a logging truck up,
But the people that drive logging trucks are usually pretty good at what they do.
Oh, well, yeah, but everybody,
We've all seen Final Destination. I mean, we've seen that, but from what I've seen, because you see those guys navigate these narrow little cliff sides and bring these logging trucks around, and if you upset that thing, they're going over, right?
Oh yeah.
And
and I've lost loads.
Candace's cousin got killed with one of those because in a logging truck, it all fell on him. I'm pretty sure it was a logging truck, but yeah, it was one of those in the mountains, and it fell on him, crushed him, and that was it.
Well, we had two different routes, kind of. We had one where they would load you with logs, but you had to keep it semi-legal. When we got a ticket, we just stapled it to our time card, and they paid it off. But if you got overloaded too high, they got really upset so they would make you offload the load, and you didn't want to get that because then they had to send a loader out to take the logs off. And you had to go dump those and then come back and pick up the other ones. And that cost a lot of money. But
were you responsible for it being overloaded?
No, well, they would, depending on the kind of load. So typically, a lot of times we'd go into the woods and they would put as many logs as they could possibly fit. And then you'd throw the cables, they called them wrappers, on the logs. And then they'd stack on top of those. And the ones on top would sink into the load and tighten up all the cables. And you'd put 3 or 4 more logs, totally as many as you could put on the truck, and then strap those off. And then they had logs hanging off, and then we drive from the woods back to the mill. But we didn't care. We just had to make sure we dragged them or however we could get them back to the mill. They'd offload them at the mill, and you'd go back for another load. But when you're on the streets, you had to trim all the bark off of them and, make sure that stuff wasn't going to fall off the load. But $7.50 an hour, big money.
Hey, you're balling out, I just don't get that teacher though, because you're a working student and he's punishing you for that.
No, I could kind of see his point. First of all, they get money by how they register students, and the fact that I registered and I never took any of those classes. We don't want to talk about that too much. We don't want to get that guy in trouble. He's probably not there anymore. And the Veterans Administration telling me to register as a botany major because I could get in easier.
Yeah.
They had a little veterans department on campus that were helping GIs that were coming back. So
when your number got called, you mentioned that your mom was pretty upset about it. But your dad was in World War II, and he was pretty high up there. And what did he think about that? Because I know that during the beginning of it, it was like, oh, here's your generation's chance to become heroes like we did. But it wasn't quite received that way afterwards,
Well, we have to look at World War II. We were attacked on American soil. Excuse me. Vietnam was a totally different war.
Right, Gulf of Tonkin.
And it was really kind of a stupid war. Isn't it funny that one of our manufacturing allies today is Vietnam, the very people that we were trying to save, right?
Well, and China in World War II. Right. I mean, Japan, in World War II.
Right.
China was our ally back then.
But a lot of young men were killed for kind of a useless reason. So it's not the same thing. My mom said that when Pearl Harbor happened, her entire senior class enlisted. I mean, everybody, whereas Vietnam was a different situation.
Yeah. Well, then you had, people like Jane Fonda that went over there, and they, what'd they call her? Hanoi Jane?
Right.
But she's still, I don't understand how she's still, on camera. How she's still, how people don't see what a piece of shit she is.
And we have a good friend. Lori and I have a friend that's brother is missing in action, and they're still trying to find his remains. So,
in Vietnam? Jeez. Yeah, I mean, that was kind of like, I don't want to say they started guerrilla warfare, but they really perfected it around there. You know, they did the tunnels, the jungle camo and everything. And, you know, all our guys were, you know, they had their shirts off because it's hot as hell and it's the jungle and which I don't know, because then you get bit by all the bugs out there, you know.
And the weather is like when I was in Korea, the weather is severe. Pouring, you know, if you watch Forrest Gump, you know, it's pouring rain, all of a sudden it stops. Then it becomes humid and terribly hot. And then the next thing you know, the wind starts blowing and then it starts snowing, you know. Not so much in Vietnam, but Korea was brutal climate.
Oh, yeah. Korea, it snows pretty hard over there, right?
Yeah. And wind. It's like, I would say the coldest place I've ever been is Seattle, because it's like just about freezing with a 40-mile-an-hour wind. You can't get comfortable no matter how you dress.
Yeah, and the ice over there. I remember when I was driving for my last trip in I think it was actually Oregon, but the ice there, it's like you don't see it. It's the black ice, you know?
Yeah, to get up to the top of the mountain where the radar sites were, we had these, what they call deuce and a halves, Army trucks with the multiple wheels on the back. And they'd be in like second gear and we'd be all loaded in the back. And as soon as you heard the engine rev up, everybody bail out because the ice, sometimes they would go backwards while the wheels are still spinning. And you didn't want to go over the side. So it was always exciting in the winter.
You were like on a cliffside or something?
Well, yeah, it was a pretty steep road and there was nothing but, you know, maybe 500-600 feet down off the road, so you didn't want to go have it slide off the road. We never had a problem, but it came close a couple times.
Deuce and a half, huh?
Yeah. It's like a 2.5-ton truck, and it had 2, 4, 6, 8 wheels in the back, you know, dualies.
When in Vietnam, when you would call in air support, what would come? Would it be just helicopters?
I never had to be in a place that had to call in air support.
Oh.
We were up on top of a missile base and you know, had radar set up there. We could, in order to align the radar, they had like a little telescope on it. And we'd turn it towards North Korea, and we could watch the North Koreans loading rounds into these big cannons and pointing them at us. And they were looking through their scopes and we were looking through ours. But in order for us to shoot a plane down, it had to have crossed the DMZ. Well, they had to drop the bombs to kill us, you know, 8 miles on the other side of the DMZ. So we were screwed anyway.
What you mean? The North Koreans would have to.
In order to hit us, they have to drop the bombs in North Korea, but we weren't allowed to shoot any missiles until they crossed the DMZ. So,
all those bombs were just dropped, right? They weren't like guided or precision or anything.
Nowadays,
like that, right?
I'm sure it's much different, but this was quite a while ago, you know.
Because would they still have to dive bomb like in World War II?
No, they probably wouldn't. They'd probably just, you know, we were a small facility on the top of a mountain, so they just put a big bomb and put it right in the middle. You know, they would never do that because it would all the retaliation. But we would have, you know, when we activated the radar and put the missiles up, you could see all the North Korean planes. It would go up into the air. You know. My job was I was a target acquisition operator, so I'd pick the targets out for the battery commander, and he'd sit next to me, and then I'd say, you know, we got, you know, this guy coming in over here, and he'd look at the, you know, but we never launched it. You know, that would have been a World War III, you know.
Yeah.
So, but it gets pretty scary when all of a sudden you see 50 planes take off, you know.
And so when you like, was that was a thing that happened? You saw 50 planes take off like at once, and then it's just
well, they go up, they create, you know, they'll 5 or 6 will go up, and circle, then they connect another 5, and then they get a certain amount of planes, and then they would fly down and get right close to the DMZ and then turn and go north again. They just trying to draw, create a nuisance, But my job, they would chaff, they drop chaff, they do all sorts of electronic jamming, and I'd have to try to screen through and actually figure out how many planes there were and that stuff. It was kind of fun, actually.
So when they try to jam you, you have like a screen that you're looking at, like a viewfinder, and so does it just go static?
No, a lot of times it'll create multiple targets, and you got to try to figure out which one is the real one. But people, it's not like we had old technology, but they were nuclear. So bottom line is you wouldn't ever shoot at a plane. You'd fire a missile up about where they were at, and it will take them all out. That's how it works.
Right. Okay. Yeah, well, that makes sense. But that's like the aircraft, the anti-aircraft guns, right? Where they just make the explosions in there. It's just like a tracer, and then another tracer to see where you are, then they start hitting you. Right?
Well, that's a little bit different because they have those like Gatling gun things that.
Yeah, the Sea-Whiz, that little bulb thing that comes out, and it's
right.
But I've seen that. I've seen videos of that to where it'll go and it'll track a friendly plane, and it won't do anything. It won't shoot, but it's like seeing that thing look up at a friendly plane. That's pretty wild. Scary. Like, whoa, easy there, buddy. Don't shoot that one. You heard that that F-18 got shot down recently with friendly fire on one of the ships.
It happens, you know.
I mean, I don't understand how it doesn't happen more often.
But I was pretty lucky. I never had to go to combat. I spent my entire military career on some mountain in the middle of nowhere. Even in Sausalito, what a great place to be stationed.
Yeah, that's killer. So, but you were stationed there and in South Korea, right? So South Korea was the mountaintop where you had to watch and see which ones were fake, which ones were real. But how do you even figure that out?
Well, they train you when you're there. They have a lot of times. They'd even have Air Force planes come in and you do practice drills and stuff. But that technology was 50s technology. The technology they have today is much more,
Yeah, well, who knows what technology they have today?
Right.
We're seeing all kinds of crazy stuff right now, and like those. Have you seen those like manta ray drones that are in the sea, in the ocean?
Oh yeah, I think Ukraine shocked the world with their drone technology because they took out so many Russian ships with little remote controlled artificial intelligence things that they just turn loose in the ocean, and it's kind of hard to see in the middle of the night,
Yeah, well, it's just they put a little, they remote control a fishing boat and fill that thing up with ordnance, and just let it, just crash it right into whatever.
But they're little tiny boats; they're not big.
Yeah, they're little. They're like a little bit bigger than an aluminum boat, right?
Yeah, or actually a little bit smaller, I think. But
really?
The explosives they have nowadays, and when you blow up something right at the water line, that's kind of a bummer if you're sitting in a ship.
True. Yeah. I mean, but then there's also like those manta ray drones will sit at the bottom of the ocean and just chill. They can chill for a long time, and then they just get activated one day. And I could see that probably. I imagine Taiwan has a bunch of those around there right now.
Well, I'm sure they have things like mines that are secured to the bottom. Mm-hmm. And they just sit there until a bad ship comes along, and then they release them and they come up to the surface and float, waiting for the ship to bang into them. Who knows what? I'm not privy to what they do nowadays. It's like crazy, insane.
It's getting closer and closer to just science fiction. It's almost like we're maybe 100 years away from Star Trek.
Maybe
we'll meet some Klingons.
They'll make you an expert.
Oh, Bill, you're giving too much credit.
Expert witness, Josh.
Expert in what?
In Star Wars warfare.
Well, the Star Wars, now this is a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Star Trek is in this galaxy in the little near future.
Yeah, that's where I'd be down going, beam me up, Scotty, in a hurry, beam me up.
I want to switch gears a little bit. You brought something here today. What'd you bring?
My daily driver.
Your Honda Civic?
No, I don't have a Honda. No, we had a Corvette for a while, 2006 C6. It was a fun car. Mm-hmm. But Lori had trouble. My wife had trouble working the clutch. She had some, was hurting her legs. So we ended up getting rid of that. And then that was kind of our spare car. So I needed another vehicle, and I always wanted to have a pickup, but I didn't want to have the ride that a pickup gives. And I wanted something that was kind of a classic. So I built an El Camino from the ground up. So I bought it for like $3,500, and it was pretty trashed. The quarter panel was creased on the passenger side, and the door was pretty messed up, and the front left fender, but it had a running motor in it, and I thought that was a pretty good. So I bought it, and then I started doing body work. And I'm not a body guy, but I spent a lot of time on the internet learning what to do. And one of the things that I tell everybody is you got to be super careful not to take the body lines out.
Yeah.
And an El Camino has a specific, same with a Chevelle, has a very specific feature on the car as a body line. And so I primed it, and I blocked it, and I got all the welding done, and I just didn't like the look of the body line anymore. I think from blocking it, I knocked the high edge off of it. So I went online, and I found that if you take masking tape, and I took a marker, and I marked in the center exactly where I wanted the body line. Then I took masking tape, and I stretched it and put it on those lines until I got it where I wanted it. And then I took filler or Bondo or filler, and I made a line on the edge of the masking tape. So it was only maybe 40 or 50 thousandths thick, whatever the thickness of the masking tape was. So I let that dry, and then I pulled the tape off, and then I put another piece of tape right on the edge of that, and I filled that. So I had an area about this wide with body filler, and an area where it came to a peak where the body line is supposed to be. And then I really carefully knocked the edge off and feathered it in. And the panels came out really nice.
Yeah, actually, I mean, I've seen it. It is pretty nice. The thing about getting those old cars that, people have obviously messed with, when you take the paint off and you take the old Bondo off and everything, it always reminds me of like archaeology, because you're digging and like, oh my goodness, look, there's chicken wire and hay in here.
No, this was pretty decent. I built another car for the wife, a 65 Mustang, and that had surprises. The body guy told me to go over all the panels with a Scotch-Brite on a grinder. And that's what I did. I took all the paint off both cars, and the El Camino was pretty Bondo free. It had a little bit of lead where they lead in the seam.
Oh yeah.
But other than that, whereas the Mustang,
that's factory though, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But the Mustang was a mess. It had been hit everywhere.
Really?
But that was a first car and I had somebody do the body work on that one. So he was constantly calling me up, telling me, well, that car wasn't as straight as we thought, But anyhow, they're fun. The hard part is sitting on the computer all day doing research to figure out what you want to do. El Camino has a LS3 in it, and I didn't want to have to butcher the transmission tunnel, so I found out that if you use I think it's 1.25 1.5 to move the engine towards the radiator. No, to move the end, towards the radiator. It gives you a lot more clearance for the transmission to fit. So I went to Holley and bought all the motor mounts and all that stuff from them. And I bought a kit from Chevy Performance. I bought a LS3, 4L70 or 75 tranny, and the 2 computers all in a package.
I thought it was a 4L65.
No, 4L70 something.
Oh, what's in those? What is that out of?
I don't know. It's a beefed up motor because the package came with a 50,000-mile warranty.
What was in it before? Was it a 383? Not a 383 stroker, right? It was just straight 383?
383 stroker.
Oh, it was a stroker.
But yeah, both of them.
Oh.
With a 700 4R.
Oh. Why? So what made you want to change the 383 out?
Well, because you told me you should. What are you doing, you numbskull? Why don't you get an LS? And the LS, I was worried that it was going to be so much more money, but by the time I built a stroker motor and put AFR heads on it and all the goodies on it, that was $6,500.
Yeah. And
the transmission was about $335, I think. And computers, even if you buy one out of a junkyard, the computers that came with the package were already tuned for that motor and tranny. And I got another computer for the transmission, so I can have 2 different shift points, 2 different shift speeds. I can I built a console, and it has one button locks the torque converter. So if you want to run it on a dyno, you can lock it, or even the other switch. I have one switch for drag radials, 26-inch tall drag radials, and another switch that turns it to street tires, which are much taller. And so I can play around with ratios and everything else. So, and then what else has it got? Oh, and then shift firmness. I can change that with a little switch by just flipping a switch.
So is there like a programmer in there, like a Predator programmer or like a HP tuners?
It's kind of like there's a Chevy Performance program for the transmission.
Oh.
So you can put in, like I actually have my overdrive shift in a little early because I like to have it where it won't keep downshifting every time I, go past very, very little part throttle. But yeah, you can figure when you want it to shift, what gear ratio you have. So an easy thing to do is when I first was racing it, I would set the gear ratio at like 325 instead of 373s, which is what is in the car, and that would make the shift earlier because it thinks it's a lower ratio. Or actually, the other way around.
I was going to say because it's
the other way around.
Yeah, because you have the higher ratio in there, right? But you have on the 4L70, they have a really, really low first gear, super low, 308 or something. So you want to hold that almost, depending on what your red line is. LS motors are like 66, so you want to have first gear run all the way up as far as you can go, maybe even 67 if you before it shifts. Yeah.
And then depending on, where your curve is, you run them and you start playing around with that and try to get the highest top speed you can,
Yeah, I'm always amazed at these V8s that have such a high red line. Like I had a guy come by a while ago that had it was a ZR1 Corvette. It was like a early 90s, and had an LT5 in there, right? And that's when they built the dual overhead cam 350s. It had like a 7,000 RPM red line.
Yeah, but a lot of guys will put those pedestal rockers in, and the shaft rockers, and they can run them up to 7,500 without destroying the stock. Rockers are not good for real high RPM. That's why they set it at but 66 for a big V8 is up there. My motor, because I'm not even running headers, I'm just running cast iron exhaust. So my max horsepower is like 55 or 58 or something, but I still have it programmed from before when I was running stroke at like 60, shifting at 66 or something.
Why not run headers? Just because it makes it so hot in there?
They always seem to leak.
Oh, yeah, they do.
And the cast iron ones, I've got 35,000 miles on the car. They never leak. And you get tired of going in there, putting another gasket set in there,
Why do you think that is? Is it because they're just so heavy and they put so much stress on the exhaust manifold bolts?
I think it's just because they're sheet metal and it grows and shrinks all the time every time they heat up. Where cast iron, once they heat up, they're not going to move around a lot, I don't know.
Okay. Well, that would make sense then. But so you had, even before the Corvette, you had something else. What was that?
Oh, my son had a Camaro that got a couple of 100+ mile an hour tickets, and I had helped finance it, so I took ownership of the car.
We'll edit that part out.
And that was a fun car.
That was Camaro number 3. That was the black and red one.
Right.
And yes, I did have a the funny thing is well, maybe it wasn't funny at the time, but it was a $450 a month insurance payment that I had, and a $400 a month car payment. And once I had got too many tickets and got the license taken away, well, suspended, I was paying $950 for nothing.
I know. I know.
So I do thank you for taking it over. And that kind of got you started back into cars and racing.
Yeah, that's the first car. I went there. I started out, I think the biggest change I made that really helped the racing was I put a Fab 9 rear end in it with 4-link and 411s.
Well, let's also not discount the supercharger.
Well, the supercharger ruined the racing.
Really?
Yeah. It was inconsistent as hell.
Oh, because it's temperature. It's so reliant on temperature.
Controlled, and sometimes you shift a second and it just torches the tires. Other times it hooks. But when I put 411s in it and I ran it with 411s, that's where I won most of the trophies.
Did you have I seem to remember there was like a big whine in that rear end, though, wasn't there?
Mm-mm.
It wasn't a loud rear end? I thought it was.
Not at all. And then I sent the transmission at a T56. I sent that out, and I had it gone through for somebody called RPM Transmissions. And they micro-polished and beveled the gears, and that thing, it shifted. It was unbelievable, the difference.
Yeah, the Micronite gears, right? And because they come with, I think, paper synchros in there. And then you replaced it with, carbon synchros?
I don't know. They went through the whole thing. They also got rid of the aluminum shift forks and put steel or something shift forks in. So basically, you just pushed on the thing, and when you tapped the clutch, it went in. Mm-hmm. Every time. I never missed a shift after I had that gone through. And, running a stick shift on drag racing is kind of unheard of nowadays. Yeah,
but you also get those people. I've had somebody on the show that has said this, Trevor, and I said you can never outshift an automatic. You can't. You can't. Even if you're the best racer with the stick or whatever. Some people will argue that they can, of all things. But that's why so many people use automatics in drag racing. They don't use it in road racing as much, but...
Well, the other thing is you can electronically control them.
The automatics, yeah.
Yeah, so you can go there, and if you're good, which I'm not, you can look at the track and say, I'm going to I'm not going to leave at this RPM. I'm going to change the RPM and the shift RPM, and you can have different programs depending on what the track looks like. And that's a big help.
Yeah.
Your old Camaro, I used to leave at 5,500 RPM and just drop the clutch.
Well, you had a 9-inch and was it slicks on there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You could do that in that.
And it would pull the wheels, this high off the ground. In fact, I got to show you there's still an old video where I'm racing a guy and you could see the front driver's wheel like 13 inches off the ground.
Oh, we'll put it in.
But well, I'm in the other lane. It's not a good picture, but I know that's the car. But the glove box would open. Everything would dump out of the glove box. My carpet, what do they call that? The protector that I had on the dash would fall in my lap. Things were flying all over, and it was pretty cool. The El Camino is the easiest car. Put your foot on the brake, put it at 2,200 RPM, and then wait till the fourth light and stuff it.
Well, you have a line lock in there too, right?
Yeah, that's just to do a burnout.
Yeah.
But, and it ran quicker. I think my fastest 60 foot is like 160 something, low sixes.
Yeah, that's in the El Camino.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because you wouldn't be able to get that in the Camaro.
Camaro guy was low 17s.
Yeah. Okay.
That's not good. The car's heavy.
Right. Well, El Camino's heavier, right?
Oh yeah, but it's an automatic. So you don't have the tire slippage that you get.
Well, one thing I miss about having a stick is just how easy it is to work on. Like how easy that thing is to just take out and put it on your chest, scoot out, and you have the transmission out, replace the clutch, which I had to do like 5 or 6 times in that Camaro and the other one. But
well, I have a lift.
Yeah. Well,
so I go to Harbor Freight by the forward wheel dolly.
Yeah.
Right. Then if I take a crate and put it on top of the dolly, right, then I lower down the vehicle to the point where it's just barely above the crate. Mm-hmm. And then I loosen up all the bolts and take the bolts off. And then I bump it once and it sits down on the crate. And most of the time, because it only moves maybe a half an inch when you bump the hydraulic lift down. And then I can just grab the crate and the tranny and it's sitting on a flat surface and roll it out. Then raise the vehicle and roll it over to the side and I'm done.
That's the stress-free way of working on cars. And I don't do that.
The automatic is so much heavier though.
Yeah.
When they fall off, they hurt.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't believe that when I took the 4L80 out. And
they're even worse.
Yeah, they are. I've never seen a transmission that heavy. Maybe an Allison transmission in the diesels they have, but this thing I would never be able to pick that up and just put it on my chest.
No.
Break a rib, but I'm going to have to figure out a way to put that in the Camaro. So that'll be fun. That'll be great fun. But let's take a look at it. Let's take a look at the El Camino.
All right. If you get back, let's see if we get some sun on it. So if you sight down the side of the car, there's a body line right here.
Oh yeah.
And if that's rounded over, you don't see the distinct change in the. And it really, when your car is primered, don't look at all the dings in the back from me.
Oh, Bill.
But,
you got the tonneau cover on there.
Yeah.
For the wind resistance.
I haven't got it. One of these days I'm going to get it sprayed or I'm going to do it, but.
Bed liner?
Bed liner.
Yeah.
But that body line is really important.
What are these? Are these Smoothie 2 rims? The Boyd Coddingtons?
Torque thrust 2s. That's like old school.
Oh.
15-inch.
Oh.
It's got a Mosier rear end. It's got a gigantic, look at the drive shaft. It's a 4-inch aluminum drive shaft.
Oh yeah, wow.
Had that made custom.
There's not a lot of body roll in these, right? Because you have a full frame.
Well, I have coilovers in the front, and I've got bags. If you look back here, when I drag race it, I have fittings here. Let's see, right there. And inside the coils are bags, drag bags.
Oh.
So I just add air, take air out. The car is going to want to squat more on this side, so you put more air on one side than the other, and that keeps it. This thing launches so straight. I have the rear end too, one flat on the 4-link, adjusted slightly to the right, so you can let go of the wheel and it goes straight, even when it's. And this pulls the front wheels about an inch in the front off the ground.
Oh, jeez.
Let's see, the front's been lowered an inch and a quarter. So, come from stock. So it's been lowered an inch and a quarter, and it's got UMI A-arms that have 6 degrees of caster built into the A-arm.
Oh.
And 1 inch taller ball joints than stock. So the A-arms, what it does is, when I was drag racing, I had somebody videotape, and the front wheels, when it comes off the ground, the wheels tilt in and out, and then when they hit, they turn the opposite way. They go in on the bottom and out on the outside, and what that does is it scrubs all the speed on your launch. And I did some research, and UMI came up with a setup that by adding taller ball joints, it changes how the front end, it doesn't do that anymore. So the motor is an inch, I think an inch and a quarter forward, and that way I can fit everything in there. And I've got the old heater box that I've gutted. I have the cover for the heater box, and eventually it's going to come here and cover up all the wiring. But I've got one wire that goes to the computers that's in here that I have to lengthen before I can do that. But the box is, that's why it's all kind of a mess down there.
It's clean in here though. Not one single old part. Has everything been replaced?
No, the windshield washer container is still
there. Stock!
And the brakes. Although it's all new brakes, but there used to be a non-power brake. But even the power steering pump's been changed.
Oh!
So the power steering, I found this company called Lee Power Steering, and I told them this used to be a one finger. When you want to turn, you could put one finger on the steering wheel and spin it. But it had no feel at all driving down the road. So I sent off my power steering pump to Lee Power Steering, and he gave me a variable speed power steering box. And changed the feel. So it's still easy to turn, but you can actually feel it. And when you're driving down the freeway at high speed, it's not so responsive. as it would be as stock. It's actually much more fun to drive. This thing drives like a newer car.
Well, let's take it for a spin. You got some slow jams going on in here, huh?
What's that?
You got some.
Well, it's got Bluetooth that goes through my phone and the telephone.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right.
So yeah, it has air conditioning, Bluetooth, telephone, everything. Just go slow over the speed bumps because it's pretty low in the front.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it is sensitive, isn't it?
And just pull it straight back. And it'll, yeah. That's one thing I've got to figure out how to tune out.
Is the sensitivity
of the gas pedal.
Ah, wow. It really this is drive by wire, right? Or is it drive by cable?
Drive by wire.
Oh, okay.
So you got to be real careful under 40.
Okay.
If you want, you have to roll into it, otherwise it'll just torch the tires. If you want to go take it up on the freeway or something. Yeah, just roll into it hard. Why do you give it harder than that? Did it shift? Are you in? Are you in overdrive? Let's see. Are you in neutral now? Touch the gas pedal. Gas. Yeah. There we go. Okay. There you go. Don't get a ticket.
No, we're not going to take it on the freeway.
Yeah, it pulls pretty good, huh?
Yeah, it wants to go.
I know. And you don't even have it on. This is in my econo switch setting. So down here, the switches, if I shifted it, if I had drag radios on, it'll hold the RPM all the way to red line.
V6, bless his heart. We don't want none of that heat.
A lot of 6-cylinder noise there.
Yeah. All I hear is the valve train.
So the nice thing too is I'll show you. So just go right now, just right now, just bump it one time hard.
Woo-hoo!
Bump it. That's not bumping it.
Woo! And we're back. Wow, I have to say,
Josh almost U-turned the El Camino at speed.
Right, and it was. I didn't mean to turn. You know, it's just the nature of that car. It's just when you stab that throttle, and you're going, like you said, under 40, or maybe I was going about 40, right?
I don't know,
but
it's certainly pitched.
I think we can chalk it up to a bit of a misunderstanding because you mentioned the line lock or the.
No, I was trying to show you as a defense when people are pulling up to an intersection and you're not sure whether they're going to stop. If you just blip the throttle, I said stab the throttle, the engine will rev up to 3,400, which is a big, deterrent. People will look and then they realize you're coming and they will stop. Josh took stab as punch it, and we weren't going very fast, and the car almost U-turned.
But everybody was safe, and the cars behind us, they knew to stay back.
Oh yeah.
And if it wasn't the sound or the direction the car was going, it was certainly the smoke that deterred them.
Right.
So, we're all a little wiser after that, I think. But you really don't appreciate the power in that until you drive it. We were just talking about this before we started rolling, but like when you drive a Corvette or, a European car, like a Porsche or a BMW or anything, it's very refined power, and it makes it so you don't feel like you're going that fast. And, but this is an animal. It is very unrefined. All the technology in there is top-notch technology. It's, you have an LS motor in there. Everything's done right in there. But when you hit that power, it puts it all to the ground, whether the ground can handle it or not.
Well, there's no traction control, no competitive mode. There's not any switch settings like a Corvette. You have all sorts of things to stop what happens under 40 with street tires.
Yeah.
But once it hooks, it pins you.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll get up there. And would you say you had a 12 flat in there, right?
I think the one that I broke out too far was 1190.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It would have gone 1190 though, right? Yeah.
Right.
But you let off, didn't you?
Yeah.
Just so you wouldn't get kicked out or lose?
No. I can run 1190. I don't need a cage till I think 1145, and they wouldn't do anything. But the problem was that I was so far ahead of the guy at 3/4 track. I let off, and I think the timer at 1,000 foot, if I had let it at that rate, would have run 1190. And I was so upset because it was a double breakout, and mine was faster than his, so I lost. And I thought, why didn't I just stay in it if I'm going to lose anyway?
Yeah.
Because I've never got an 11. I've had a 12.001 time slip. I've had many under 12.010, probably 10 of them. But of course, with cold air intake, if it's a cool night, they run like hell, Yeah. So, and I'm running it all in the summertime. So, the other thing is that motor, it started out at 1220s when it was new. It's got 30,000 miles on it now, and it's quicker than it was when I first put it in because the engine's loosening up.
Yeah.
So who knows? And now the last thing I do is I put coilovers in the front, which that's got to help.
Yeah, I mean that kind of because Jason ran into this when he put coilovers on his MR2 is like now he's scraping on everything, and it was low already, but that lowered it just enough to where he scrapes coming out of his driveway, scrapes everywhere.
No, but it shouldn't have to. If they're all the coilovers is a spring around a shock. You can set them up to the stock height. The only thing is for the A-arms I told you about that I put on here that changed to the taller ball joint and the 6 degrees caster built in, and that changes the geometry of the front end. That's why it's 1 1/4 inches lower. But I didn't have to do that. I could run stock height, but I had to do that to make those A-arms make a huge difference in how it corners.
That's what I'm so hesitant about the suspension is obviously my shocks are completely shot. So I need new shocks anyway. But if I were to go to something that lowers it, I don't want to lower it at all because I'll break off my front spoiler,
Yeah, but why would you want to?
I don't.
Yeah, people lower their cars for looks. I didn't lower mine. Well, actually, this has just got a slight rake because I've got smaller front end tires. I could put bigger tires on the front and make it level, but it's got a 1 and the coils in the back. I can raise up the coils. All I have to do is add 2 or 3 pounds. Each pound of air I add to the drag bags adds 60 pounds of load.
Oh,
So I have them right now. There hardly any air in them. But when I drag, I put 15 pounds on the right side and 8 or 7 or 8 in the left.
So let's talk about your posi. Because obviously there's a 9-inch in there. You got it brake to brake, right? You bought it as one unit to where it included the brakes, or did you?
I put the brakes on.
Oh, you did. Okay.
And I put, which I shouldn't have done. I bought their inexpensive kit. It uses GM metric calipers. They suck. They absolutely suck, because if you don't use your emergency brake, they go out of adjustment.
Oh, really?
So you have to be in a habit of using, and I don't use an emergency brake. It goes into park. So they're a pain in the ass. The best ones are like I have on the Mustang, the wheeled ones with a little mini parking brake. Those are a little bit more money, way better. They never go out of adjustment.
You said it's Willwood?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they fit because it's a 9-inch rear. I've gone through tons of posies. I had Wave Track. Well, I have Wave Track in there now. That's a geared posi. Track Lock, which is what a lot of guys run. The problem with those is sometimes at the end, when you let off, it'll put power to one wheel and could throw you off the track. I have something called Wave Track. I like it because it's a lifetime guarantee. I broke one in the Camaro. They turn it around in 24 hours. And I call him up and I said, so did you look at my diff? And the guy goes, oh yeah. What kind of horsepower are you running? And I said, well, the car's probably somewhere up around 550, something like that. And he says, oh, I wouldn't. When you get around 2,000 or 3,000, then we start worrying. But what was wrong was that was an older version of the posi, and it had a clip broke, and that's what got lodged in the teeth and caused all the problem. Oh. But we fixed it, and it's already in the mail. You should get it tomorrow. But that Wave Track is geared like a track lock, but it doesn't click. You don't hear it at all. And the posi is phenomenal. I mean, it's a great, but they're a lot more expensive. They're like, I got that one on sale when it came with the differential, but they're a little bit more money than a geared track lock or something.
Or like a Detroit locker.
Yeah.
Well, that's just full. Is that just a full spool?
No, it's posi.
Okay, but those are a lot cheaper, right?
Than a full spool?
No, a Detroit locker is a lot cheaper than a Wave Track.
I don't know. They usually use those on 4-wheel drives. I don't know what they are for racing, but track lock is usually the one that people have.
Because when you like pick out the rear end, you select all the options, and it's like, do you want this powder coated? Do you want this, whatever?
Well, for most people that are driving daily drivers, the clutch ones are great. Mm-hmm. Just don't do burnouts.
Right. It'll just burn it out.
As what you were doing in the front yard here a few minutes ago.
Well, I mean, how could you not? I was encouraged to do it.
Because what happens is when you pump, you're not going to just hold it at a solid RPM. You're usually like pumping the gas pedal, and it starts throwing back and forth in the posi. And when you're doing a burnout at the track, I burned up a couple clutch posies on this car, on the Camaro, because it's basically a Ford rear end and uses Ford clutches. But that track lock, it's been infallible, and this one has got about 50 really hard passes on it. No problem.
Yeah, it doesn't make a huge sound. You can't really hear it or anything.
No, you don't hear it.
Yeah,
you don't hear it.
I mean, you built quite an animal there.
The only thing I wish is I could get it quieter through the mufflers, but I don't want to change all the way, the straight through muffler. So I have the biggest ones you can put underneath the car, and it's still loud. It's pretty calm until you nail it, and then everybody knows you're in it.
Would you think about putting like multiple ones in, multiple mufflers?
Well, I have 18 or 19-inch mufflers plus 3-foot resonators in there now. And I kind of like having a sleeper better than a noisy. But the cam is a dead giveaway. As soon as you pull up to a stoplight, everybody at the stop sign knows knows you got a cam. Yeah. But on the road, you're pulling along. Mustang pulls up next to you. In fact, the new Mustangs are scary fast.
Yeah, with the Coyote motors.
Yeah.
They get up there. The 5.0s, they have like around 450 horsepower, right?
I think they're I looked online. Some of them are running 11s now.
Yeah,
which is pretty good. But even the old Mustangs before the Coyote motor were running 1220s or something, which is pretty good.
Well, it's just amazing to think like it wasn't really that long ago that the LS motors, if you see a Firebird or a Trans Am or a Camaro, that was basically one of the fastest things on the road.
The guy that I bought the subframe connectors for the Mustang, his son, Meyer Racing, the guy is autocross champ, in a Mustang, like a 65, 66, somewhere around there. He told me that, and I was driving the Camaro when I picked up the part, and he told me that they had to create a separate class of autocross because those Camaros were dominating. Nobody could even touch them. Some minor suspension work. They had tons of horsepower, and that LS would,
Yeah.
And he said, now, I don't know about now, but back then in the 90s, 89, 92, maybe, that time frame, they had to create a special class.
Oh yeah, well, because that's when the LT1 Camaros and Firebirds and Corvettes came out, and that was kind of a game changer because you didn't really you had not quite coil on plug, but you had fuel injection, and once they created the LS motor, then it was you have coil on plug, you've got fuel, you got multi-port fuel injection, and it's just. It's a perfect motor to where they've been out for so long now that they are today's 5.0s. They're the motor that everybody puts in everything now.
The only issue with the early LSs is they would break the top ringland if you over revved it. And that was and they had a oiling issue, which they've cleaned up many generations ago. But the LS motors now, when I was young and in high school, people would build hot rods and they would brag about, my mom's car is the most reliable car we've ever had. We got over 100,000 miles on it. And that was unbelievable to get 100,000 miles. Nowadays, you go to a junkyard, you pick up any car with mileage on it, and the rings are still like brand new,
Yeah.
Because of fuel injection. Mm-hmm. Imagine instead of spraying a mist in, depending on what the fuel requires, it was like taking a can of gas and pouring it.
Yeah, just like slightly, drizzling it in. It's like
every time you touch the gas pedal, it dumped it in. It didn't care if there was too much because it burned it all out, but it washed all the oil off the cylinders. And so the technology's gotten crazy. And engines are a lot more reliable, and the technology for developing motors are, in the 60s when they talk about muscle cars like that, El Camino came with a 396, right?
Mm-hmm. Those are the SSs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what they don't know, what people don't remember is the fact that it's 100 pounds heavier and less horsepower. Mm-hmm. That motor in there is way lighter than even probably the stock V8, but...
Well, the LS3s, those are all aluminum, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because my 6-liter, that's an iron block, so it's going to be about 100 pounds heavier.
And a stock LS is good to 750 horsepower without having an iron block.
Right.
You put an iron block in, you're talking thousands of horsepower.
Yeah, well, what I've heard is and I guess there's kind of a debate about this, but the one that you really, really want is a 4.8 liter iron block because that has the thickest cylinder walls.
That's a truck motor, right?
That's what I have in the Yukon. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's not very fast. It's not very fun to drive as opposed to the 6 liter. but I don't really know anybody that has like. There's so many other things that would go wrong, I think, before you burst through a cylinder wall. You know, and so I guess in theory, yeah, that's the strongest block, but
unless you look at my stroker motor.
Oh, because you put a piston through it, right?
I broke the crank. Okay, so the first one, the thrust bearing went out.
Yeah.
And I think that they didn't clean up the garbage from that because the bearings seized and it broke the crank in 4 places and put the crank through the block. My fans were at a 45-degree angle on the front of the motor. It broke it so bad. And my push rods were twisted. I have a couple.
Oh, yeah, I did see that.
So there was not much chance of rebuilding that.
Yeah, you got to send me pictures of that. We'll put them in. We'll put those pictures in because that's people got to see that. What can really happen inside of a motor?
And you know how fast I was going? 5 miles an hour. I was pulling out from a stop sign. And I had been babying the motor to break it in, which is not good. Should never baby a motor break. You shouldn't over rev it, but you should treat it with respect. But you never baby them. It's not good. And never let them idle. That's the worst thing you can
Didn't
do.
you say somebody did that? Somebody just had you got there and they just put the new motor in and it was just idling there, right?
Yeah.
Was that the guy with the big mustache?
I don't remember what car that was, but I told him, don't start it. Pull it up with and the guy fired it up. And while he was doing something, he let it sit out there in the street and idle. I don't remember what motor that was. I've forgotten. I've broken so many.
Yeah, well, I mean, after that, the motor's never the same again.
Can't do anything to fix it.
Right.
So,
well, could you re-ring it?
Maybe.
That's about, you'd have to get down in there, though.
But then once you're doing that, you might as well
put new pistons in. And then you're in the, well, I might as well go forged. Well, if I'm going to do that, I might as well gap the rings. Oh, if I'm going to gap the rings, I should put turbo in there. Like, you know, and it's a slippery slope.
So the biggest thing I did on the stroker motor was I took off, they had put Procom heads, Chinese heads on them. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember what it dynoed at. I had taken it somewhere and had a dyno, but I put AFR heads on it. It gave it 80 rear wheel horsepower.
Yeah. Well, AFR is the best.
But 20 miles later, the motor breaks and destroys 9 of the valves.
See, China was trying to save your motor.
And maybe. But I put new valves in it and rebuilt the heads and ended up selling them. You know, used parts are usually like 50 cents on the dollar. But the gal that got the heads was tickled to death because I don't know what AFR heads were. I think they were like $2,400 or something.
Yeah, that's up there. That's up there, those heads. So
but they're, I mean, when you look at them, even the machine, you look at them and you go, man, that machining is something else. So, and I got lucky on this. It's a LS3 has some of the best heads you can get.
Right.
For a LS motor. So,
yeah, people put is that cathedral port heads for the intake side?
I don't remember. All I know is they're sort of the top dog.
Yeah. Well, that was the last time that they made. That's the last pushrod motor, right? Because now they're all do overhead cam. Mm-hmm. Oh, a little bit of history. Well, thanks for coming by, Bill. And,
thank you for taking a few thousand miles off my tires.
It was my pleasure.
No, it was fun. It's like you don't realize how much that thing pulls until it shifts to second.
You really don't. It's a surprise.
Yeah. I mean, you're not going to be leaning forward.
Yeah. Well, I got to go in now and change my underwear. So I'll see you guys later.